I spent that night sat on his bed peeling the burnt skin off his back in huge white sheets. Most nights we would watch through the bedroom window as the drunks went past. One night a group was outside and had turned violent, which wasn't unusual, but this night Alan shouted out the window, "That's enough, lads, leave him." They didn't listen. He shouted again, and this time towards the house, but with the window still open. "Pat, bring the shotgun." They vanished. We didn't even own a shotgun. We did own a blank-firing 6-shooter pistol, though. I don't know why. Alan told me to wait in the kitchen downstairs and close the door. I waited until people stopped walking past the gap I'd made between the door and the doorframe, and then I peeked out. There was a man on our sofa. Pat was blocking my view. Alan told her to lock all the doors and check the windows. When she moved, I could see he'd been stabbed. There was a fair amount of blood, and the knife was still in him. I knew I should feel something about this, but I didn't. I just felt, oh, there's a guy on our sofa who's been stabbed. I hope the front door's closed. I wasn't worried, because Nana, Pat and Alan were there. And whilst they were there, I knew I was safe. Chapter 2. Most memories of Nan involve her cooking or knitting. She was short, but far from a small woman. Depending who you asked, her nicknames ranged from Sergeant Major to the Battle Axe. She also made bugs. Tiny little wool balls with feet, plastic eyes, and a ribbon that was placed along the dashboard of cars or mantelpieces. You don't see them much nowadays, but back then they were a great source of advertising. She used to buy them loose from the company and make them all up. Then she'd sell them back for double the amount. She was very strict with money, as we didn't have much of it. Each week a small amount would go towards Christmas, and no matter what, we weren't allowed to touch it. She loved Christmas. We'd decorate everything from the ceiling downwards. We always had a star on the tree, and there was loads of food and presents. One of the ways we raised money was going door to door and asking if people had anything for the jumble sale for Nan. Most people donated something, even if it was just an old pair of trousers. Pat and Alan didn't drive, so we used to take it in turns to carry the bags home. I knocked on one door as she watched from the roadside with a cigarette in her mouth. She was taking long puffs and seemed relaxed, but she was expecting something. A round lady opened the door. "Anything for Jumble?" I started as I held the black bag up. "What? Why would I give you anything?" she asked me, looking downwards. I didn't know why she would either. I was completely put on the spot. I turned back to face my Nan for an escape route. The round lady looked up, met Nan's eyes as she sucked hard on the cigarette and slung a paw onto her hip. "Oh, hi Pat, I didn't know it was your lad. I'll go and see what we got, yeah?" she said, vanishing behind the door. She returned several seconds later with several pairs of trousers and some sweets. "You're doing such a good job helping your Nan," she said sweetly, handing me the sweets and putting the trousers in the bag for me. Nan didn't even speak. She simply let out a snort and we went on to the next house. My favourite film was The Never-Ending Story. I watched it back to back with Nan while she did the knitting. I'd nicknamed the flying dog Golfax. I wished I could just fly on his back like that young boy had done. We were out browsing the second-hand shops one day when I came across a Golfax teddy. He had a zip up his belly and I wanted him immediately. "Look, Mum, Golfax," I said, running around the store flying with him. "Can I have him? Can I? Please, Mum, love you. Can we get him, eh? Can we? Can we?" I was jumping up and down on the spot with excitement. "No, we don't have the money," she said. I put him down and slung my head down to make Nan change her mind. Alan called me over and showed me a tiny black keyring that had a tiny little blade inside it. "Nan's birthday soon, lad. She'd like this for knitting," he said, all love and affection in his voice. I remember being able to see the top of his green woolen hat as he leant down. I bought it for her with my granddad and left. I hung my head down all around town that day. When I got home, Pat said, "Bedtime, you've been miserable all day." "What, Mum?" I asked, shocked. Pat was never like this with me. I said, "Bedtime, don't argue," she replied. I looked at Alan and he winked. I knew when Pat said don't argue she meant it. She'd not hesitate to slap me. She always wore these big heavy gold rings which helped to get the message across. I slumped up the stairs, swinging my shoulders, and opened my bedroom door. Sat there in the middle of my bed was a brand new Golfax. I grabbed him, he was so soft. I ran downstairs full of excitement and I hugged my mum and dad. That's the kind of people they were. With me, at least. I was flying down the back garden path Grandad had made around a year before from paving slabs whilst I skateboard when I hit the edge of a slab and I was momentarily in the air. I remember clearly thinking, "That's not good," before landing heavily on my wrist. A white pain went through me like nothing I had experienced. I knew I was in trouble. Nan put me in a buggy, whilst Alan tried to get me to move my wrist. I was having none of it. "Don't touch it, don't touch it," I yelled. Nan ran me in the buggy a mile plus to the hospital. She was so worried about me that she threw up when she got there. A nurse ran out thinking that Nan was the patient. I'd had a green stick fracture in my wrist. It wasn't long before I was back on my feet and helping Alan make my first mountain bike from old parts he'd gathered up at the tip track. We just needed a front wheel and we were good to go. I remember tinkering with the Allen keys in the sunshine as he explained the difference in sizes to me. It having no front wheel didn't stop me from trying to round it around the back garden though. The white front forks dropped deep into the grass every time I lifted them to pedal. It was fun for a few seconds. I was able to remain moving before sinking into the mud again. I was in pain. My throat hurt and it felt like I'd been on the sofa for weeks. I was aware Alan was reading his Western books in his jeans and cotton shirt with his green woolen hat pulled down. He was lying on the floor leaning against the sofa that I was lay on, his black hair peeking out slightly. When he noticed I was awake, he folded his book and made wrestling gestures along with the television to try and cheer me up. I smiled, but I had no urge to join in. My mind was willing, but my body just wouldn't make the effort. It was Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. It was my favourite match. He rewound the tape each time so we could watch it over and over. I had tonsillitis pretty bad. Now I'd been spoon-feeding me, but I couldn't take any more. I'd gone from crying when she tried to flat out refusing. I was all waiting list and could hear her getting upset when I didn't eat. Nan had called my father around as I'd been on liquids for 2 days. She told him as I lay on the sofa, "I don't know what to do. He won't eat. The hospital won't see him yet." She stood in the living room next to Wenzel. My father looked down at me in his suede jacket, blue jeans and shiny chrome-looking spectacles and said, "Fuck him. Tell him if he won't eat, his throat will close up." And he walked out. I started shaking with fear involuntarily. I didn't know what was happening to me. I knew I couldn't eat, and believed if I didn't, my throat would actually close up. I had no reason to doubt him. I lay shaking whilst Nan tried to soothe me. I could feel her anger towards Wenzel as she brushed my hair back. "Ignore him. Talks a load of rubbish, that man. Don't know what Bernie sees in him, I really don't." I'd like to say I relaxed under her touch. However, the truth is, I was arching my back and gasping for air, trying to breathe. The more I flapped about worrying about it, the worse my breathing got. Finally, it was operation day. I'd had the anaesthetic I was asked to count to 10 by a polite man dressed in white. I did, and Pat and the male nurse exchanged a look. I was placed on a heart monitor and asked to count to 10 again. I got to 3 before I was out like a light. I woke up with Pat right beside me. I was so excited to see her I flipped up off the bed and shouted, "Mom!" I'd stood straight up before the effects of the anaesthetic hit me and I fell straight down. I had no urge to lift my arms and ploughed face first into the white tiles on the floor. It hurt, but it's not as much as I'd imagined. The worst part was having Nan and a nurse get me to the toilet so I could pee whilst they held me up, one of them either side. My throat was sore. "Talk to me, darling, you've done so well, I'm proud of you," Nan said. I lifted my head as though willing the words out. "Ice cream," I managed. Nan had promised me ice cream every day since we'd found out when my operation was. I was looking towards it, more than a holiday at Blackpool. I wanted to see the giant lights surrounding my ice cream and feel the cool sensation on my throat like a water slide all the way down. I knew I could eat anything after the operation. I knew I'd get ice cream because Nan had told me it, and she said it, then it was true. I got toast, and I ate it grudgingly. There were several other children at the table, when Nan promised me ice cream when I got home. I noted the other children didn't have parents present. I was lucky to have someone I called Mum there. I felt sorry for them. Alan had finished tightening the front wheel and placed my big heavy green bike next to the curb. I had to jump to get on it. Whilst he held the seat for me, he taught me how to ride down our road by pushing me away from the curb and holding the seat whilst I pedalled. I was safe because he was always there, until he wasn't and I was pedalling on my own. Then I panicked and fell off. There was plenty of scratched knees and each one would get the same answer, all calm and relaxed. Get up, back on. And where I'd finally had enough falling, when my knees hurt and my hands were rough from pushing up off the pavement, he'd pull me in the back to the curb where he'd bend down and look me gently in the eyes. "You're not quitting, lad. Back on." I learnt to ride well. After a few weeks, I think nothing of standing on the crossbar as I went down the street. We'd take trips to the tip track together, or the allotments. One day it was beautiful. We were in a field with a huge conker tree. Alan climbed up, and I went into autopilot. Nan wouldn't like this. You've epilepsy, Grandad. He laughed. It's okay, lad. Nan ain't here, is she? It was rhetorical, but I looked around anyway. If she was, I'd get a thick ear for letting him climb the tree. I laughed. But Nan wouldn't, I started as he shook a branch and made monkey noises to drown out my question. I creased up laughing as confidence rained down on me. I can still remember the laughter tickle its way through me today. We filled the entire bag with conkers, and I felt real proud. I was proud of him, and I was proud that I was his son, and everything felt just perfect. He put his giant paw on my head and ruffled my hair. Love you, lad, he said. Love you too, Dad, I replied honestly. When we got home, we tipped them all out on the living room floor and put strings in hundreds of them. When Nan came home, she went nuts. Look at this place, you stupid man. Alan just laughed her off. When she went into the kitchen, he winked at me and said, Guess she ain't playing conkers with us then, lad, eh? Chapter 3. I don't remember my brother and sister being born, because they didn't live with us. Each time there was another birth, I was just told that I had a new brother or sister, and that I was to take care of them. I was told by Nan and Alan, who'd take me around to see the baby for an hour or two, as Wenzel, Nan and Alan would play cards, whilst Bernie played with the newborn or did puzzle books. The baby was called Jonathan. Mum said he was special because he was born with a hole in his heart and a squint in his eye. She said we were very lucky to have him, and he needed special attention. I saw Jonathan near Christmas, but otherwise we rarely saw one another. Bernie didn't go out because of her agoraphobia, and Wenzel was always working, or he was on the farm or at the local shop. I was told he specialised in bedding plants and worked long shifts, so he didn't come to see Nan and Alan often. On the odd occasion, my brother Jonathan would be allowed around to play, and we'd make swords and shields and play warriors in the garden. He loved our manual lawnmower, a big green metal thing with huge handles, and would run around the garden with it for ages. He mustn't have got out a lot because of Mum's agoraphobia and how protective she was of him. Those times being able to play like two normal boys were both rare and cherished. Caroline had been sent to live with me at Nan and Alan's house. I was told it was so that Mum could get well enough to look after her again. I wasn't old enough to question this or really understand it. I was just happy Caroline was there. This meant more people to play with, and I wanted to show my toys in my room. Unfortunately, we didn't get much playing done because Nan didn't like girls like she liked boys. Nan's attitude changed as soon as Caroline was indoors. Where she spoke to me like a little adult she cared about, she spoke to Caroline like she'd been very naughty and was disliked immensely. I liked playing with Nan's jewellery and would sit and put the rings and necklaces in size order and then mix them up and redo it all over again. I liked to see the light shining off the different gems. I'd put a ring in my pocket to play with. Nan wouldn't mind as long as I returned it, but I forgot about it and I went off doing my thing, when later I heard Nan shouting at Caroline in the bedroom. She sounded really angry. Caroline was crying. She only had the nightshirt on, and I went up the stairs. Where is it, you thieving little bitch? Nan snarled. She was bent down, leaning into Caroline's face. I'd never seen her like this. She'd never swore at me. I don't know, Caroline replied, stuttering and sobbing. I was scared for Caroline and scared for me. Now, I'd never been like this before. The room seemed darker, even though I knew it was daylight out. Nan seemed to take up the whole room. The curtains were blowing slightly in the breeze, which seemed to give Nan an angry look as the shadows crossed her face and wall. Mum, I asked. Don't interrupt, she's taken it, I know she has. Nan said, turning back to me and swiftly back to Caroline, jamming a finger into her chest and holding it an inch from her face. I'm ashamed to say I stood rooted to the spot and I said nothing. I didn't care about the curtains anymore. That prod alone must have hurt. The more Nan went on, the more Caroline insisted it wasn't her, and the more she cried. It probably lasted about 5 minutes, and yet it felt like forever. Nan eventually grabbed her hair and dragged her over the bed where she hit her repeatedly. She was slapping her body and head. Caroline must have been terrified because a brown patch appeared near her nightshirt. Caroline must have been terrified because a brown patch appeared down her nightshirt. Nan grabbed her hair and dragged her to the bathroom. She ripped off her nightshirt and slapped Caroline around the head and body with it. You dirty little bitch. She pushed the soiled shirt into Caroline's face. I ran behind her. Mum! I was pushed away easily. Don't! She snapped forwards and lifted her arm. I legged it into the bedroom, sat with my knees to my chest on the double bed.